Chapter 12. Streaming. There was a window in their living room looking out at the backyard of the house. Though there were several cherry blossom trees visible, they were sad things, twisted and black. There would be no blooming season this year, a fact that had saddened Chiaki greatly when she realized it. The pink flowers had always been a sign of beauty and cheer, and their absence was just another reminder of the world's state. The pansies they'd planted had just started to bud, and the color was appreciated, but it wasn't really the same. Have you noticed any abnormal side effects from your medication? Breaking out of her musings, Chiaki turned her gaze away from the view outside, back to Kamakura-kun. He was looking at her expectantly, and she tried to remember what he'd just asked. Something about her medicine having side effects? Right, that was it. She hummed in affirmation.
Not at first, but lately I've been getting a lot of stomach aches.
Her mental therapy sessions had gradually been reduced to once a week, rather than every day. Chiaki didn't doubt that this was partially due to Kamakura-kun's analytical skills. The counseling sessions were mostly just progress reports on how her mental state was, not a search for any abnormal behavior. He wouldn't need to ask her to spot them himself. He nodded once, short and precise. I will adjust the formula then. Have your nightmares increased or decreased in frequency or vividness? She frowned.
They're still pretty common. Every other night, I'd say. And pretty realistic. Like 16K resolution realistic.
The sad thing was, she considered herself lucky. She only had one awful nightmare a night. Kamakura-kun had told her that some PTSD patients had multiple a night, so they'd wake up from one and then fall right back into another. Chiaki would take one long nightmare over several smaller ones anytime. The content is still the same?
Yeah. Most of the time I'm back in the maze, reliving everything. Sometimes Hinata-kun or my classmates will chase me through it.
She rubbed her arms, trying hard not to think about their red eyes or the wounds on Hinata-kun's head.
Other times Yukizomi-sensei is pushing me in the elevator, or Enoshima is taunting me. The dungeon is the most common, though.
When Hinata and your friends show up, are they still saying the same things? You should have died, or you let us down. Other sentences in that category.
Not anymore. Now they're just silent.
She glanced at him.
That's a good thing, right?
It is an indication that subconsciously you are starting to let go of the self-blame, so yes. Chiaki was quiet. It didn't feel like she had begun to absolve herself. Every time she thought of her friends, the surge of guilt still hit her strong. Not only for her role in their brainwashing, but for not being able to do anything to help them now. If she thought on it too long, the depression would start to creep back, whispering, useless, useless, over and over. She hugged her knees to her chest, reaching down to play with her socks.
When will the Neo World program be ready?
Kamakura-kun had kept her a bit updated on it. With his anonymous funding, the faculty on Jabberwock Island, wherever that was, had been built. Production on the program itself had finally resumed. By my calculations, it will take at least another year for it to reach a beta stage. Of its 3 developers, 2 are indisposed of. Matsuda Yasuke is dead, and Fujisaki Chihiro is locked inside Hope's Peak Academy. Gekohara Miyaya has been attempting to continue its development without them, but she only has their notes as reference points, and her other duties to the Future Foundation keep her busy. The Future Foundation. Chiaki wasn't quite sure how to feel about that group. On the one hand, she was glad that there was an organization trying to restore order and peace to the world. On the other, she was leery of them. According to Kamakura-kun, the leader, Tengan Kazuo, was once the headmaster of Hope's Peak, and after learning what she had of the Academy's corruption, well, she just wasn't sure she could trust any authority figures from there anymore. Do not dwell on it. Kamakura-kun was rising from the chair opposite, so he must have decided the therapy session was done. There is no point in musing on things you cannot change.
I know. I just can't help worrying about them the longer they're out and brainwashed.
She watched him glide across the room.
Where are you going?
To begin modifying your medication.
Oh, can I watch? I've never seen medicine be made before.
His indifferent silence told her she could do whatever she wanted, so Chiaki pushed herself up and with cane in hand, followed him up the stairs. She made it halfway before having to stop, and he turned and picked her up before resuming. He set her down outside his door. She looked around curiously as he opened it. She'd never actually been in Kamakura-kun's room before. It was much larger than hers. Against one wall was a table with a chemistry set, a freezer, and a cabinet, probably for creating various medicines. The opposite one held a desk with his laptop and computer equipment, for hacking and security, she wagered. The bed was impeccably made, the closet held only rows of identical black suits, and everything was very proper and clean. And empty. Everything in it was only there for a practical purpose. It felt more like an office he happened to sleep in than a bedroom, a place to work, not to live. The only hint of a personal touch was the birthday card she'd made for him, looking very out of place on his dresser. She beamed when she saw it still there.
You kept that?
There was no logical reason to discard it.
But there wasn't a logical reason to keep it, either.
He did not respond, and she stepped forward and embraced him, closing her eyes to better relish his warmth and the smell of detergent on his clothes. A lot of otome games would talk about how musky a guy's scent was, but she'd never noticed that with Kamakura-kun. He just smelled clean.
Thank you for keeping it.
Hugging him had become something she was very fond of, and each time she was always a bit more reluctant to let go. He was just so solid and warm and cozy. Definitely an odd image for the stoic and apathetic man, especially since he hadn't returned her hug since the first one, but it was just what she thought of him. Why do you do that? He asked suddenly. Chiaki tilted her head back and peered up at him, puzzled.
Do what?
Hug me. You have your pet for physical comfort, so why do you continue carrying out this action? Disappointment and hurt swelled in her. Chiaki knew she was weirdly touchy, with little sense of personal boundaries. It was just hard to read what was socially inappropriate and what wasn't, so she usually didn't try. If people had problems, they'd tell her, and she'd try to account for it. Her friends had never said anything about minding, and Kamakura-kun hadn't either, so she'd just assumed. She released him and stepped back, face red.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you didn't like it.
I did not say I was averse to it. I just do not understand why you continue to seek physical contact with me when you are not in distress, and when, even if you were, you have other avenues available.
Why? There's no rational reason, I guess. I just like it.
She played with her fingers, hoping he wouldn't ask why, because she wasn't certain she could answer. Fortunately, he did not. Her answer instantly silenced him, and from the focused look in his eyes, she knew she wouldn't be able to pull him out of his thoughts for however long it took him to sort through them this time. She cleared her throat, feeling unusually warm.
Well, I'll just watch you work then.
She went to sit on his bed and thought better of it. There was something overly familiar about that. So she pulled over a chair and sat beside the strange table full of medical equipment. and despite the lingering awkwardness, she was able to pass a pleasant afternoon in that manner. "You are distracted," he stated, and Chiaki almost tripped down the stairs. An arm reached out and wrapped around her waist, yanking her back up against him. Heart racing from her close shave, she tried to think of how to respond. How was she supposed to say it was because of him? Or rather, her failure in any progress related to her goal for him. March had just started, and she hadn't even made his lips twitch. And that was ignoring how it was almost a year since she'd been living with him. That long, with not even one expression of happiness. She'd known getting him to smile wasn't exactly going to be an easy task, but it was disheartening to set a goal and not make any progress on it. Even she had moments where she was tired and doubted, and he'd just happened to catch her in one.